What's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're getting into this Prime 1 Studios piece. This is Guts, the Black Swordsman in quarter scale. This is the regular version. We're going to go over the EX, which is an extra portrait towards the end of the video. But let's just check out this box art. Now this is the first box and it's got some really nice high-end photography on it so you can see the piece. And then the second box has this loose ink drawing theme that they've been having going on in this specific Berserk line. So jumping right in, this is the assembly instructions. So you guys are seeing what I'm seeing as I assemble this thing. It's very clear on where everything goes pretty much. And here's the back side, so all the pieces, how they fit in the box. So if you need to unbox it or rebox it, you know what to expect. And here are all the individual pieces, or at least most of them. There's two other large pieces on the other side, which we'll see in a second. But that's everything all laid out. And on the other side, we have the gigantic sculpted cape and the severed head of the beast that Guts is standing on top of. I love a sculpted cape, so I'm hyped on that. Now, I wanted to show you guys the base before we put anything on it, because the base is really out of control and it's just doing so many things with this piece. So you can see Guts's internal beast sitting right there in a cool fixed pose. You got the child squiggling around on the ground, and then some more severed limbs of the giant beast that we're going to be putting down. So let's start putting this thing together. We're going to go ahead and start off with the very first piece. This is the severed head of the beast that Guts has slain. The back of the head is just as cool, if not cooler, than the front, because you see all the anatomy of the beast and his brains and everything like that. We just got Guts' body in there and the spooky tree. I love the spooky tree. It's awesome and it reminds me of the manga a lot, actually. So I typically put this in the position where Guts has his sword down. There's a couple different options which we'll go over, but as you can see, I'm getting this sculpted cape put in. Now it kind of felt like it was actually keyed in all the way, but it kind of had the appearance that it wasn't. So you see me playing around with it quite a bit. It was actually keyed in the whole time. I was just being paranoid and didn't want it to fall. So moving on to the next piece. Now, you kind of have to do this together at the same time, which I found out the first time, to get the pieces to line up. You kind of have to put the sword into the arm and then put them in together. That made things a lot easier. Had to put this together a few times to kind of figure that out. And then just the tassels hanging off of Guts' Dragon Slayer sword up there. So now we're moving on to some of the smaller pieces. I just inserted the sword, the front, brand of sacrifice up there, and then this spear that kind of makes the whole statue a lot wider, actually. I don't display that in my display case because it just takes up a lot of room, but it is a cool detail with the battle spear with the tapestry kind of blowing back there. These are the arrows that go inside the beast's head. He's got 3 little holes. Now, it kind of feels like each one goes in a specific hole, so it took a second to figure all that out. So let's go ahead and check out the piece now that everything's together. As I said, the base tells so much of the story, and we can really just tell what this dude's been through and what he's willing to do whatever he needs. So you don't really have to have read the manga or seen the anime to understand like what is going on and how epic this character's journey is. You just really get a sense of how badass he really is, and that there's so much mythos to him just by this base. So everything tells a story, from the child kind of squirming behind there, the severed beast head, the sword going in the head, you know he defeated him, the ghost coming after him, the spirits. Again, it's like you don't really have to fully understand the narrative of the whole story to understand the statue, and that's why this is so good. There's just so much going on. It looks like a 3D painting. So here's a closer look at the base and just everything going on below Guts. So the traditional base with the cool design we've seen through all the other pieces, and the brand of sacrifice. The beast that kind of like lives within Guts, it kind of represents his rage and his sense of evil, essentially. So I like that they kept him in there. It's very much a part of Guts. Now, The tree definitely has a crazy seam line. You can see it. Now the tree's kind of tucked away in the back, so if you're looking at the statue in the front, you almost don't even really see the tree. You kind of just see the branches, but the seam line's a little crazy. I thought they could have maybe done a little better than that. There's a little baby infant creeping from the back. I love that thing. It's so creepy and scary and pretty awesome. There's Puck, the realistic Puck. Now Puck comes out and they give you an extra little rock with a peg to fill the hole. And then you can choose the other version of Puck if that's the one you prefer. So here is Guts in all his glory. I typically keep this statue with the sword facing down. I really like how it goes into the beast's head and it makes it more interactive. It kind of connects Guts into the scene in a really creative way, and it also just knocks the height down because this thing is ridiculously tall when his sword is up. But you can see that amazing sculpted cape with the dirt and mud that's just caked on from him traveling all over the place. The armor is nuts. We're going to get into all of that up close, but really just seeing the movement of the piece from, you know, the curvature and kind of that S-curve of the beast laying on the ground to the coiling kind of, again, S-curve flow of the tree, Guts's cape kind of blowing in that direction. Everything has a lot of movement and everything flows with each other really well. You really get a sense of like the wind and movement in his environment just by how everything's moving and being affected in this particular piece. They did the blood really tastefully. I think they do a Bloody Nightmare version of this where he's just covered in blood, and I don't know why you would go for that. It would just cover all the beautiful paint and all the detail of everything, all the leather, and all that just gets washed away in blood. I think this is perfect because the blood is exactly where it needs to be to tell the story, and but doesn't cloud anything going on with the character or the base or anything like that. So I obviously forgot an extra one of the spirit heads in that first go around. I found him later and then noticed there was a hole in the tree. So I kind of blew it there, but I'm going to add him whenever we do these switch outs. I realized that I didn't have the spirit in a correct angle, so that's why it took me a second to get him in there, but the magnet met and it grabbed it right away. So I'm going to go ahead and do the switch outs now. We're going to remove his right arm and the sword going into the beast's head. We're going to replace it with the upright arm, and that's actually going to carry the sword over his back. It really does bring the piece to another level. I do like this just as much as the other pose, but due to the height of the piece and it fitting inside of one of my cases, and then you really see like the wound inside of the beast's head is very clean and sharp and smooth, so the sword can fit inside of there. But when it's out, the details are really good, but you can tell the sword is kind of supposed to go in there, and I can't not see that. If I had only seen the statue in this pose, I might not notice it, but to me it just looks like there should be a piece there in the head. So another reason why I keep the sword pose down in the other pose. So now you see I removed Puck, but I put him back because the rock was in the box and kind of packed away. So I didn't feel like going through that again, but I'm just adding the Pucks around so you can see where they all go. You get one kind of hanging in the tree. I love Puck a lot. Puck really grew on me in the series and in the manga, and one of my favorite characters, especially when he's being silly and funny in that derpy mode. It's a very cool character. So let's go ahead and get a full shot of the piece with the change out parts. So you can see the sword, it doesn't really like rest on his shoulder. He is actually kind of holding it up. So you don't have to worry about it scratching the cape or anything like that. It is a lot of weight for that like one peg that goes into his arm, and then that's held on by the magnet of the arm into the torso, so it kind of made me a little nervous. The magnets feel strong and everything, but it's a lot of weight for it to hold. So again, maybe another reason to keep the sword down. And here is a closer shot of the different portrait, the arm up, just so you can see it from a different angle. Really does look good, and again, just continues the movement of the wind and the flow of the piece. I really like how the sword, again, he is holding it up, and you can really tell by how the anatomy of the arm and the muscles in the arm show that he's lifting the weight off of his shoulder. Very believable. So here's the close-up of the brand of sacrifice that goes right in the front, just like all the other pieces. Now here's some close-ups of the beast laying down. This is probably one of my favorite things of the piece. I love the glossy, translucent resin of the tongue, and the texture in the ear is just really pitted and porous and just pretty gross. The sculpt on the fur is incredible. I love the paws crossing each other, very weighted and heavy. You really believe that he's a big, big character. He's got those big, sharp, pointy ears. Very cool design. There's the beast in the back, some dead enemies' heads and swords and Puck. Everything just continuing the story. Some great detailed shots of the beasts that Guts has slain. And here's that tree that I seem to like so much. Kind of reminds me of an old Disney tree you would see in the background. And our creepy little version of the child squirming around there. The translucent resin on this is really, really cool. And then they did some like opaque paint to play with the fleshiness. Very, very cool. And here's the detailed shot of the back of the beast's head. This is really unfortunate. You don't see this as much when you're looking at the statue in the front. The way the blade cut through the brain, and you can see that, it's really awesome. Some detailed shots of these spooky little spirits that are haunting our guy over here. And I'm going to keep going on about this cape because I love these sculpted capes. I really like the one on the Berserker armor piece. That one's really wild, but this one's cool. It's not too big, but again, it's just lots of flow. That's the front of it, lots of texture. Now, the detail on Guts' armor is nuts. I love the brown suede leather against the dark black metal with the silver pieces. The amount of detail, some of the chains are loose and can move. Most of the buckles are sculpted, but the precision of the painting of this is really, really good. And the washes and the leather, pulling everything out. I mean, for a production piece that they made a lot of these, this thing just really looks good. And some of my favorite Prime 1 work I've seen in person. Now, his arm here is something special because look at the hammer that hits the cannon to ignite it, and the detail on his cannon arm is cool. You see the barrels in the arm, and then the actual real spring in the back. Like, the amount of detail on the arm is just nuts. His armor just kind of reminds me of a ring wraith or some kind of Nazgul from Lord of the Rings. I like the plated pieces, and the movement of blood on the sword just shows the movement of where he swings it and cuts through stuff. Again, the blood on this piece is very tasteful, and it's a lot, but that's what the story requires. But the bloody mess, or the bloody nightmare version, was just a little too much for me. I couldn't really get into it. Here's a close-up shot of one of the portraits. I really like this one. I typically pose this one the most. I like his smirk. It kind of just shows he's just got everything in control and he's not bothered by a single thing. The sculpt on the hair is really, really good and sharp, and just they didn't cut any corners with that at all. And then this is the alternative portrait. I do like this one a lot too, but it kind of looks a little more worrisome. I think the other one's a little more lighthearted and like he's really got the situation under control. And the brand of sacrifice on the back of the neck is amazing. Look at the wet, glossy, pooled blood inside of the matte skin. Very, very effective, and I love that it just peeks through on the cape right there. It's really, really nice details. And here's the portrait sitting inside the cape. Now, this is the EX portrait that comes. It's really cool, and I would definitely display it. I'm kind of going to be on the hunt. Sometimes you can find people selling them, just the portrait itself. So I always ask because you never know. But this is the EX portrait sitting on top of the piece. These are pictures I just grabbed from Prime 1's website. And here's the alternative Pucks up close. I love these guys. They're pretty adorable. Go ahead and like this video. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you can keep up with all the future videos we have coming. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next time.